Welcome to the Deconstructionist Deep Dive, the podcast that doesn't just accept the story.
We break it
We examine the pieces.
and expose the machinery inside.
Let's dive in.
So today we're taking on a really crucial mission. We're doing a deep dive into the source code of the anti-transhumanism narrative.
And this isn't just, being a little skeptical of a new phone.
No, not at all. This is a fully constructed worldview, a really complex one that's designed from the ground up to position technology as the fundamental enemy of what it means to be human.
And we're going after a specific flavor of it, the kind you see popularized by people like Braden, that's all centered on this idea of spiritual biology.
Right.
The core idea is that your essence, your, quote, divinity, is locked inside your current unmodified biological form. And our job today is to dissect the source material on this. We're going to show you exactly how the story is engineered to be, well, immune to facts.
Immune to logic, to criticism, to anything. We're applying the scalpel to its deepest foundations. We're going to map the whole thing out from its unprovable starting points.
The axioms.
Exactly, the axioms, right through to its political and social conclusions. We want to show you the operating manual. This is the operating manual for fear.
And I'm looking at it from a wider lens, Why does this resonate? Why do people actually run towards a philosophy that says stop progressing? And I think it's because it offers this powerful metaphysical security blanket. It makes a complex world feel simple by framing everything as a conflict.
Which brings us right to the hook for today's deep dive.
What if the battle for your humanity isn't against technology at all, but against the very fear that tells you to reject it?
Let's unpack that. We're starting with its core, untouchable beliefs, the foundational axioms of fear.
So to build a story like this, one that can, stand up against the constant march of science, you need a really solid foundation.
Well, it seems solid, but it's actually built on quicksand. It's built on unprovable axioms that you, the listener, must accept as truth for any of the rest of it to work.
And if you accept that starting line,
you're guaranteed to end up exactly where they want you to. It's a closed loop. So in this anti-transhumanist argument, we've identified 4 of these key assumptions. They establish the entire framework of the sacred human.
And we need to be clear. These aren't just like minor disagreements over safety protocols for AI.
No.
These are huge assertions of fact about the nature of the universe itself and our place in it. They basically rigged the game from the start to make technology the bad guy. Not a tool, but a spiritual aggressor.
Okay, so the first axiom, it's the metaphysical conflict framework. This is the big one. It's the belief system that yanks every contemporary event, AI, CRISPR, whatever, out of the realm of human innovation.
And drops it right into this grand, ancient battle between good and evil.
Exactly. It's the ultimate narrative shortcut. A new gene editing technique comes out, and you don't have to evaluate it on its merits or its risks.
Nope. You just have to ask, which cosmic side does it serve?
And they claim this battle specifically is targeting human divinity. That just raises the stakes to an insane level immediately. You're no longer having a debate about the ethics of an algorithm.
You're fighting the literal forces of darkness.
And that's the question you have to ask. Why? Why does progress have to be framed as a war? Why can't we just be dealing with the messy, difficult, but ultimately human problems that come with new capabilities?
Because war is simple. War has clear sides. It shuts down the nuance. It shuts down the intellectual discussion. The moment you buy into that framework, you can't analyze transhumanism anymore.
Not as a series of engineering problems or philosophical questions.
Yeah.
No, you have to treat it as a planned, coordinated attack.
And the implication is that technology can't be neutral. It just can't. Because it's being used as a weapon by the dark side, its very existence is tainted. It moves the whole conversation from the lab, where you can test things,
to the pulpit, where facts don't matter nearly as much as the alleged demonic intent behind them.
And that first axiom, that fear structure, it leads you perfectly into the second one.
Axiom 2, biologized spirituality. And this is really just a fancy term for the logical fallacy of reification.
Which is basically when you take something abstract and you treat it like it's a physical object.
Exactly. So here the abstract concept is divinity. And they drag it down, kicking and screaming, into the material world.
And the definition they use, it sounds really positive at first. They say divinity is the power within us to transcend perceived limitations.
Which, that sounds a lot like the goal of transhumanism itself.
Right. But then bam, the trapdoor snaps shut, they add the constraint. This power is accessible exclusively through your current unmodified human biology.
And we have to pause on this word, reification, because it is the absolute keystone to the whole argument.
It really is.
You're taking something totally abstract, love, justice, or in this case, a soul or divinity, and you're treating it like it's a physical thing you could put in a jar.
In this narrative, they literally give the soul a physical address. They take this beautiful, abstract, spiritual idea, the essence of consciousness, and they turn it into a concrete, measurable and. Here's the key part. Protectable biological commodity.
Usually your DNA, or your pristine, untouched neural network.
And if your divinity is physically located in your cells, then anything that alters those cells, a synthetic medicine, a neural implant, gene editing, it's not just a medical procedure anymore.
It's spiritual contamination.
It simplifies everything. It makes the incomprehensible simple. Instead of having to grapple with the mystery of what consciousness is, you just point to a double helix and say,
That's it. That's the sacred artifact. Don't touch it.
and you can't overstate how powerful that simplification is. It makes the whole narrative actionable. You don't need to study philosophy for 20 years.
Nope. You just need to keep your body pure. It turns this deep philosophical quest into a very simple, very conservative biological instruction.
Which leads us right to axiom 3, the logical next step.
Technological antagonism. And the claim here is severe. It's not just a warning, it's an absolute. Any technological integration, AI, gene editing, neural interfaces directly and inherently blocks your access to these biological divinity powers.
Just think about what that means. A cochlear implant gives someone back their hearing. It enriches their life in a way that is profound.
Of course.
But according to this axiom, because it's an integration, it must be dampening or even killing their divine potential. The body has to be whole, unmediated,
Yes.
pure.
It's a massive logical jump they're asking you to make. I mean, we all accept that glasses or a prosthetic leg are tools. They're extensions, not corruptions.
Right, they extend our capability.
But second that technology extends the mind or tweaks the genome, it magically stops being a tool and becomes an impenetrable spiritual wall. The function of the tool to enhance, to repair, becomes totally irrelevant.
All that matters is its synthetic origin.
It's a category error. They're treating the material source as a metaphysical barrier, which is just, it's nonsense. It's framing technology not just as a risk, but as the ultimate unforgivable original sin against your own biology.
And to lock all this in, they need an origin story.
Yep. And that brings us to the final foundation stone, axiom 4. Human exceptionalism, propped up by the so-called 200,000-year intervention.
So the claim here is that standard evolutionary theory, the one that explains pretty much all of life on Earth.
It just breaks down conveniently,
yeah.
specifically for humans. And it's because of some unexplained intervention that happened about 200,000 years ago.
And that date is very strategic, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It roughly lines up with the emergence of anatomically modern Homo sapiens. So by claiming there was an intervention right at that point, the narrative gets to say, we aren't just a product of slow, messy, continuous evolution.
No, we're special. We're fragile, instant creations, preloaded with divinity from the factory.
And this move is philosophically necessary for the narrative to even work. Because look, if our existence is continuous with the last 4 billion years of evolution, if we're just the current version of an ongoing process,
then transhumanism is just the next logical step. It's self-directed evolution.
Exactly. But if we're the special product of a fragile 200,000-year-old miracle, then any change we make ourselves isn't progress. It's an act of vandalism. It's self-destruction against a perfect, finished state.
It creates this story of a special, but also incredibly delicate origin that has to be defended at all costs. Our biology isn't a work in progress anymore. It's a priceless artifact that was left for us.
So there you have it. Those 4 axioms: metaphysical conflict, biologized spirituality, technological antagonism, and human exceptionalism. They form a perfect, self-reinforcing logical cage.
A cage designed to funnel you directly towards fear and ultimately biological stasis.
Okay, so once those foundations are in place, and this is crucial, the listener has to accept the premises of sacred biology and this cosmic war, the narrative shifts. It moves into a highly structured sequence.
And this sequence is designed to make you feel like you've gone on a rational journey of discovery.
Right, it feels like you've done a thorough investigation, even if the logic underneath it all is, well, it's full of holes.
It mimics a proper argument, problem, evidence, mechanism, conclusion. But it fills each of those steps with metaphysical claims, not facts, giving you that aha moment without any of the actual intellectual work.
So the sequence kicks off with step 1, problem framing, establishing this existential threat to your precious humanness.
This is the shock doctrine part. They create this urgent feeling that something incredibly valuable is being stolen from you right now.
Before you even have a second to think about it critically. And that feeling is immediately solidified by step 2, the historical basis.
This is where they pull out all the stops, citing ancient civilizations, Atlantis myths, vague references to lost knowledge.
And they pair that with selected DNA evidence to justify the special origin story we just talked about. It anchors the threat in deep time, making the current problem feel huge and inevitable.
And then comes the really deceptive part, the mechanism explanation.
This is the how-to section. This is where the spiritual claims get dressed up in a lab coat. The speaker starts borrowing complex scientific terms to make the whole idea of divinity feel mechanically real.
It gives you the why. Why does technology corrupt the spiritual mechanism? They claim to have a scientific explanation that's also spiritual.
And then, bam, they bring it right into your living room with step 4, the contemporary manifestation. This is where they name names.
The specific, immediate threats, transhumanism, AI research, and almost always some kind of international political, global governance that's supposedly pushing this agenda.
It takes it from the abstract battle between good and evil to that specific tech company and that specific UN policy. It gives your anxiety a concrete target.
And the journey ends with the prescribed response. After all that, there's only one logical solution left on the table.
You have to advocate for biological preservation. You have to engage in consciousness-focused resistance. The whole 5-step journey efficiently moves you from, I'm a little uneasy about this new AI, to, I must fight to keep my body pure.
It's an elegant weapon, really. A self-sealing loop. But let's talk about why it's so effective. These narratives don't just work on logic. They thrive because they pull specific, very powerful emotional triggers.
We've pinpointed 3 main emotional deployments here that are designed to turn your skepticism into sheer existential fear. The first one is the fear of loss.
The quotes they use are crafted for urgency, like this one. We're about to give our humanness away before we even know what it means.
And that just generates intellectual paralysis.
Exactly. The goal is to create such a sense of urgency that resistance becomes the only option. It plays on that natural fear of making a mistake you can't undo, like a cosmic case of buyer's remorse.
The second emotional tool is the concept of sacredness. This is where they elevate your biological identity into something protected, globally important.
The quote they use here is designed to make you feel incredibly special. Something deep within each of us so powerful, so precious, that nations will go to war over it.
I mean, who doesn't want to believe that?
Right. It transforms your personal biology into a geopolitical asset, a national treasure. If your DNA is literally that precious, then any corporation trying to patent a gene is committing a war crime against your very soul.
It bypasses your intellectual defenses entirely by appealing directly to your sense of self-worth. You're not just some person, you're a cosmic rarity.
And the third trigger, which is just as powerful, is victimization. This externalizes all agency. It's not your fault. You're being targeted.
And the quote for this one is a classic. We are being played to be pawns in this ancient game.
This creates that essential us versus them mindset, which is psychologically very comforting. You're not just struggling to understand complex science. You are a noble resistor fighting back against hidden, powerful manipulators.
It's so much easier to fight a clear villain than to grapple with messy, decentralized, and often beneficial scientific progress.
So now we have to take the whole thing apart. Let's get into the actual reasoning or lack thereof.
The logical fallacy inventory. These are the broken hinges that let the argument swing from a spiritual claim to a scientific conclusion without any real support.
And we already talked about the big one, maybe the most important one.
Reification.
Right.
It's the essentializing of the abstract. They take divinity and they concretize it into a biological mechanism.
Specifically, your DNA is a quantum antenna.
By making divinity physical, you make it vulnerable. And if it's vulnerable, the need for protection becomes immediate. It turns a philosophical question into a home security problem.
And then there's the powerful intellectual straitjacket of the false dichotomy. The argument insists there are only 2 choices.
You can either be a pure biological human, or you can be a soulless synthetic cyborg. That's it. Pick one.
Which is designed to just eliminate all nuance. It ignores the huge, messy, wonderful spectrum of human augmentation that has always been a part of our history.
From eyeglasses to pacemakers, it forces you into an extreme defensive corner. If you accept a smartphone, well, you're already on the slippery slope to becoming a soulless cyborg. It's absurd, but it's incredibly effective at shutting down thought.
Then you have the classic intellectual dodge, the god of the gaps.
This is where the narrative weaponizes the known limits of our current scientific understanding. It takes real, complex evolutionary puzzles, like the fusion event that created human chromosome 2.
And presents them as definitive proof of supernatural intervention.
So science says, look, we know this fusion happened, we can see the scars in our DNA, but we're still investigating the precise ecological pressures that made that mutation successful millions of years ago.
And the narrative jumps into that tiny gap of knowledge and shouts, aha! See, it wasn't evolution, it was intelligent design.
It weaponizes scientific humility. Because most people aren't experts in evolutionary genetics, the statement, the explanation is incomplete, gets twisted into the explanation is wrong.
And then you have the appeal to ignorance, which locks in the paralysis. The rhetorical loop is basically, we don't fully know what it means to be human.
Therefore, we have to stop everything and not modify ourselves at all.
But that turns humility into a weapon for inaction. Human history is the story of modification. We figured out what it meant to be human by picking up a sharp rock, by taming fire, by creating language, all radical changes.
This fallacy demands we freeze the process of self-discovery just in case we get it wrong. And finally, the most basic flaw of all, circular reasoning.
The existence of the big metaphysical conflict is used to explain why technology is advancing so quickly.
And then the fact that technology is advancing so quickly is used as proof that the metaphysical conflict is real.
It's a perfect self-confirming loop, completely immune to any outside criticism. These fallacies are the grease that keeps the fear machine running.
Okay, so to make any of this convincing, to make people believe this metaphysical war is real, the narrative has to borrow the authority of science.
Which is where the pseudoscience scaffolding comes in. This is where they take real scientific terms, rip them completely out of context, and then use them as, well, as metaphors to justify these wild spiritual claims.
And we need to spend some real time here, because this is probably the most intellectually dishonest part of the whole thing. It preys on your respect for scientific language while completely rejecting scientific method. Let's start with the centerpiece, the so-called God code in our DNA.
The claim is just breathtaking in its audacity. It's that our human DNA contains a literal, readable message that says, God eternal within the body.
And this is presented as the proof. The physical proof that the intervention 200,000 years ago was divine.
So how did they get this message?
Well, it's not through anything like genetic sequencing, no.
Yeah.
It's done through this bizarre, highly selective correlation process. They matched the atomic mass values of the elements in our DNA, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, carbon, with ancient language gematrias.
Okay, let's unpack that for a second. Gematria. This is an old system, mostly from Jewish mysticism, where letters are given numerical values.
Right, so you can add up the value of letters in a word to find hidden meanings. It's basically numerology for words.
So they're taking the atomic mass of, say, a hydrogen atom, and then they're looking for a letter in an ancient language that has a similar numerical value.
Exactly. And the key is the selection process. It's completely arbitrary. The analysis we're drawing from notes, they specifically pick 4 root languages: cuneiform, Sanskrit, Arabic, and Hebrew. Why those 4?
Because they give them the numbers they want.
Precisely. They hunt through these systems. They take the atomic mass of an element, find a numerical value in their chosen gematria system that's close enough, and assign that letter. They keep picking and choosing elements, languages, and numerical systems until the letters spell out the phrase they wanted from the very beginning.
It's the definition of forced correlation. You're just tweaking the variables until you get the result you want. It's fitting the data to the conclusion, not the other way around.
And they use the authority of the periodic table of elements to give this religious idea a fake sense of physical proof.
And of course, they conveniently forget to mention that if you use the same method on the DNA of a banana, you could eventually force it to spell out whatever you wanted to.
It's a masterclass in confirmation bias, but it's dressed up in scientific language. And it goes beyond the God code. The narrative relies on the widespread misappropriation of established biology.
Like with their claims about neuroscience.
Right. The discourse states that human neurons have no known upper limit. and can adapt far beyond anything we perceive.
Which is just a wild exaggeration of a real thing called neuroplasticity. Our brains really can adapt and rewire themselves. It's how we learn.
But they take that real observable fact and they twist it into a mystical superpower. They amplify it into this idea of a limitless biological potential, that we could have telepathy or instant learning if we just weren't being corrupted by technology.
They take the real science, the brain adapts, and they leap to this unprovable fantasy. The brain is infinitely divine, with zero evidence for that leap.
And they do the exact same thing with the chromosome 2 intervention claim.
The one they used to prove the 200,000-year intervention.
So, for anyone who doesn't know, if you look at the chromosomes of a human and a chimpanzee, there's a key difference. Chimps have 24 pairs, we have 23.
And this is one of the strongest pieces of evidence for our shared ancestry with them.
The scientific explanation is that at some point in our evolutionary past, two ancestral primate chromosomes fused together end to end to create what is now human chromosome 2. You can literally see the evidence. We still have the junk DNA of two centromeres and the telomere caps fused in the middle.
It's a well-established, demonstrable fact of evolution. It's settled science.
And yet, this narrative takes that exact fusion event and presents it as proof of intelligent design. They say this fusion was the physical mark of the divine intervention that gave us our souls.
So they're taking irrefutable evidence for evolution, flipping it on its head, and deploying it as proof for special creation. It's an incredible move.
And the pseudoscience doesn't stop with biology. It has to extend into cosmology and history as well. The whole universe has to be part of the story.
So they co-opt quantum physics. They'll bring up the double slit experiment, where observing a particle seems to change its behavior, and use that as support for simulation theory.
They grab the weirdest, most easily sensationalized part of quantum mechanics and use it to argue that reality itself is just a cosmic computer program, which validates their whole framework of a metaphysical battle.
While deliberately ignoring all the boring, non-metaphysical interpretations that physicists actually use to, build lasers and run the GPS on your phone.
Of course. And to build this sense of lost divinity, they lean on claims of cyclical civilization reset. They try to correlate ancient myths and archaeological gaps with these long 12,000-year cosmic ray cycles.
The implication being that cosmic forces periodically wipe the planet clean, forcing humanity to restart and lose all its advanced divine knowledge.
Which creates this powerful sense of doom. We have to preserve our purity this time before the cosmic ray cycle gets us again.
And the proof for this lost superior past, that's where the archaeological anchors come in. They use real anomalies, like the incredible age of Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, or unsubstantiated claims of structures under the Antarctic ice.
And they hold them up as proof of these technologically advanced predecessors. But these sites are fascinating because they prove human ingenuity existed far earlier than we thought.
But the narrative can't accept that. It has to be proof of a lost, superior technology that was given to us. It reinforces the core idea that humanity is in decline from a perfect origin, not constantly striving to improve.
The common thread through all of it, the God code, the neuron claims, the quantum weirdness, is the selective use of language. They love the terminology of science DNA, neuron, quantum, but they reject the scientific method that demands evidence and peer review.
They're using science as a sophisticated marketing metaphor to sell you a deeply conservative, almost religious worldview.
And it works. It gives you the intellectual validation of a science lecture,
with the comforting authority of a spiritual dogma.
All right, so we've broken down the architecture of the pseudoscience. Now we have to step back. Where does this narrative actually fit? What other ideological systems does it look like? And maybe most importantly, who benefits? Who profits from this fear?
Because when you strip away all the talk about DNA codes and cosmic cycles, you realize this isn't a new idea at all.
I'm not even close.
It's just borrowing the core mechanics from other very established systems of belief and control. It's an old template that's just been updated with a few quantum buzzwords.
Let's start with the most obvious parallel. Religious dogma.
The function is identical. It's all about establishing exclusive access to a sacred truth, whether it's the one true interpretation of a holy book or the one true interpretation of the God code.
The listener is made dependent on the speaker, the guru class. They become the unique interpretive authority, the gatekeeper who understands the real science that the mainstream is hiding from you.
And that creates dependency. If your eternal salvation, or in this case your spiritual safety, depends on understanding this bizarre numerology, You have no choice but to listen to the person who claims to have decoded it. You're granting them total authority over your worldview.
A much more modern parallel, and one that is just as potent, is anti-vaccination rhetoric.
It's the exact same structural pattern. It's a purity contamination narrative.
Right back to Axiom 2, the idea that your biological essence, whether it's your divine DNA or your natural immune system, has to be protected from any external synthetic modification.
Both narratives play on that deep, innate fear of irreversible bodily change. They demonize the synthetic, the foreign element being introduced into what they call the perfect biological system.
It's a powerful fear because your body is your most intimate space. And in this context, the line between a vaccine and a neural link just dissolves. They're both seen as contaminants to your sacred biology.
Then you have the older classic Luddite traditions. The narrative frames advanced technology as the inevitable destroyer of essential human qualities.
Community, natural health, spiritual connection, you name it.
It's pure intellectual nostalgia. It paints this romantic picture of a pre-technological utopia while conveniently ignoring the brutal reality of what life was actually like back then.
High infant mortality, grinding poverty, rampant disease, short lifespans.
Glossed over. It trades historical accuracy for a comforting fantasy, encouraging people to retreat from the complexities of the modern world.
And the glue holding all these parallels together is the unmistakable pattern of conspiracy theory. The core epistemology, the way of knowing things, is instantly recognizable.
They don't want you to know.
Exactly. This positions every mainstream authority, scientists, journalists, governments, corporations, as part of the deception. They're all agents serving the dark side in the ancient metaphysical war.
Which is psychologically comforting. If the world is confusing or painful, you can just blame it all on a powerful hidden cabal that is actively hiding the simple sacred truth from you.
Okay, so let's get specific. Let's identify the power beneficiaries. Who actually profits when people buy into this fear?
Well, at the very top, you have the guru class itself, the speaker, the author, the content creator. They are positioned as the sole interpreter of these biological spiritual truths.
Which centralizes all the authority and often the money in their hands. It doesn't matter if their claims have any basis in reality. They become the essential filter between you and the world.
Second, this narrative is powerful fuel for certain political ideologies. It gives a kind of metaphysical justification for skepticism of technology, which aligns perfectly with anti-progressive movements, and specifically with libertarian anti-globalism.
It turns political resistance into a holy war. If some international organization wants to implement a digital ID system or a genetic database, which are seen as tools of transhumanist control, you're not just debating policy anymore.
You're fighting the dark side. It gives a political agenda a spiritual urgency, and it allows opponents of international cooperation to frame their position as a defense of the human soul.
And you absolutely cannot overlook the alternative health industry.
Oh, it's huge. By making the natural biological state sacred and demonizing any technological integration, which includes a lot of standard medicine and pharmaceuticals, this narrative creates a huge market.
It provides the perfect metaphysical justification for preferring non-medical, non-technological cures.
It pushes the idea that your body is a perfect machine that just needs esoteric, natural, support-like, expensive supplements, detoxes, or meditation courses, often sold by people in the very same ideological ecosystem.
It steers people away from tested medicine and technology and towards unregulated, expensive alternatives. The narrative successfully monetizes the fear of synthetic contamination. The whole structure is designed to consolidate power and money in the hands of the interpreters.
All right, so we've laid out the foundation, the sequence, the ideology, and who benefits. Now it's time for the final act.
The final dismantling. We need to expose the ultimate internal self-defeating flaws in the argument itself.
Because for all its complexity, all the talk of DNA codes and cosmic cycles, the structure has these massive, glaring contradictions. And once you see them, the whole thing just collapses.
The most obvious one is the performative contradiction. This is just a beautiful piece of irony. The argument uses technology, highly advanced digital recorders, global internet distribution, complex software, social media platforms, to spread an anti-technology message.
It's the ultimate cognitive dissonance.
It really is. You are relying completely on the tools of this synthetic, globalized, high-tech world to warn people about the dangers of this synthetic, globalized, high-tech world.
If technology is inherently corrupting, then the very platform you're using to deliver your warning is also corrupt. It invalidates the message from the very start. You're sawing off the branch you're sitting on.
Then there's the deep, inconsistent logic about what humans are capable of. The narrative screams that we're special, we're divine, we're exceptional, we're perfect.
While at the same time denying that we have the capability for self-directed, self-created evolution.
It's a paradox. Your biology is perfect, but it's also so fragile that if you try to improve it, if you exercise your own agency, you'll instantly break it.
It positions the human essence as this static inheritance that has to be put in a museum and protected, rather than what it actually is, an ongoing, dynamic project defined by our ability to adapt and transcend.
You could argue that true human exceptionalism is the ability to choose our own evolutionary path, to overcome our biological limits.
And that reveals the core philosophical mistake they're making, the flaw of essentialism. The whole argument needs human to be a fixed, static category that was perfected 200,000 years ago.
It's what we call reactionary essentialism, and it just can't logically survive the reality that we are constantly changing, constantly evolving through our tools and our choices. The narrative can't handle change, so it just labels all change as corruption.
And when you boil it all down, the entire framework, the entire narrative completely falls apart because it refuses to answer two critical questions.
The first one is simple. What testable, falsifiable evidence can you provide that this biological access to divinity is a real, quantifiable thing?
And not correlations, not numerology. Real evidence that meets the standards of the scientific method they pretend to respect.
And the second question, why can't self-directed transformation be the defining feature of what it means to be human? If we're so exceptional, why does our nature forbid us from using our greatest power, the ability to intentionally change ourselves for the better?
And ignoring those questions allows the narrative to exist, but it comes at a huge cognitive cost for anyone who buys into it.
The biggest price you pay is epistemic closure. The framework creates a self-sealing bubble. Because one of the core axioms is that mainstream science is lying to you, it automatically rejects any evidence that contradicts the ancient battle story.
Any counter-evidence you present is just reinterpreted as more proof of the conspiracy. Falsification becomes impossible. You end up in a perfect self-referential echo chamber.
Which leads directly to imagination constraint. Your vision of the future gets squeezed into that rigid false dichotomy.
It's either biological stasis, which is safe and divine but limited, or it's a synthetic dystopia that's soulless and corrupt. It completely blocks your ability to imagine a better, more nuanced future where technology and humanity can work together.
And ultimately, it all leads to agency externalization. Your human essence is no longer something you build or create. It's a fragile inheritance you have to protect.
It's biological conservatism disguised as spiritual wisdom.
You're told you're powerful and divine, but only if you promise to never actually use your power to change, to adapt, or to evolve. The narrative trades your agency for a false sense of security.
And that's our deep dive for this week.
Remember, the most dangerous illusion is the one you don't know you're in.
But now you know. So here's our question for you. Where in your own life have you accepted a sacred limitation because it felt safer than embracing your potential to evolve?
Let us know in the comments. Question the narrative. Deconstruct the dogma. See the system.
We'll see you next time. Stay skeptical. Thank you for joining us.